But before we start, I just have to say a few things. Since you may not have the interest nor the time to read all philosophers, but if you have the time, probably you should try and give some attention to these two, Plato and Russell, different points of history made very interesting changes in philosophical thinking. It would be a pleasure to look at the classic dialogues of Plato if you get an opportunity to do that. And also this one particular book of Russell, Bertrand Russell. I'm saying this name assuming that at least you would have heard of this name, okay, Bertrand Russell. And I'm sure Sundar would be mentioning in his philosophy of mathematics class. But an extraordinary personality. He was with us till 1970, passed away in 1970, right? Okay. Well, the biography, I'm sure you can get it from the net and you can know more about these people. But only a couple of ideas I wanted to bring to our discussion. One is this idea of dialogue as the method for engaging into serious and intense philosophy is, I think, an interesting point which kind of Plato developed, which also you see a trend as a philosophical method in Indian philosophy. As a method, dialogue as a method. For example, in Indian context, you have something called the Uttara Paksha or the Purva Paksha, or Purva Paksha and Uttara Paksha. You make a statement of a different point of view or a different theory first, as clearly as possible, then present your viewpoint. So it happens that many times you understand the theory of another school when you read probably an exposition of this particular school, because it's an important necessity that you have to have the capacity to explain another theory as clearly as possible and as it is, not as you think it is, but as it is, before you make your own critique about it. So this is very interesting. It may not be exactly this way if you look at the dialogues of Plato, but it's more nested and it's quite complex. I don't know if anyone of you would have gone through it. It's very interesting. It's quite nested, so it has a complexity in the form of a narrative itself, not in just philosophy, but as a narrative itself. For example, if you read the Republic or a couple of other dialogues, Plato, you would see this mention like this person, all the Greek names. I wouldn't be able to say all the Greek names. You would say that, okay, this person was not able to go to that person's house where a discussion on reality happened. So, but the other third person wants to know about that discussion. So how do you know about it? So there's a fourth person who happened to be there and who has listened to it. So probably we should go to his house or know from him what has happened. So this kind of bringing in more people and a kind of making philosophy as a community event. It's not exactly as it happened in probably India, but you would see the importance of dialogue and interaction as a very important method in doing philosophy. I'm also trying to justify what we are trying to do. Narrative as a story, and again nested stories. In one story you would find another story, and then again,
and using of characters.
Characters. Yeah, we are going to read from Kathopanishad, so that's why we are going to actually read it. And again, using story as a powerful medium to convey something which is otherwise quite complex and unacceptable. These are some of the methods. Yes?
From what I understood, as far as literary history goes, those were the mediums that were used to explore, to write about ideas. Prose writing wasn't really that practiced in ancient Greece, from what I know. And storytelling may have been more prevalent form of communicating ideas.
Yes, that's right. Well, I think the serious difference between probably the Greek classics and the Upanishadic literature is the Greek classics also are not involved much in a prosaic way of telling things, but more in a kind of a a kind of a poetry or different kind of narrative. But what the difference, I think, is the myth making is more popular in Indian and Eastern literature, which is not so popular in Greek literature. If you look at the classics, especially, you know. But for example, if you look at a couple of Upanishads, you would see a very serious discussion on a particular idea, and then the next part of it would be a completely in a mythical context, where the ideas or the concepts used need not have any reference to events or entities which you are familiar with. But I think in at least what I have read in Greek classics is it's more direct. There isn't much myth making as probably in the Upanishadic literature. But you are right. There's no kind of running literature you have in any of this.
They were heavily dependent on oral communication.
That's right.
So that it was easier for them to memorize.
You want us to wait for you, Lena?
No, just
Okay. She's happy. Okay, well, another idea which I wanted to stress again about Plato is, I just want to drop a couple of ideas. I'm hoping that you would have a chance to look at the reading material, okay, which is sent. For Plato it is important to think on the edge, you know, to see something new. So his famous allegory of cave, which we are going to read in a few minutes, itself helps us to show that there could be many ways of looking at things. There could be many ways of looking at things. You know, though we might, at the immediate step, we might think probably this is the only answer or this is the only definition for certain understanding certain ideas. But there could be a multi-perspective view. Well, Aristotle was a bit different, as you would know, and he was the originator of many disciplines. He concentrated on more stable concepts. He wasn't much in favor of this having this flexible, fluid concepts, you know. So probably he was more in a kind of a realist. And of course, as you know, that Platonic idealism, you know, to be on the edge and to think for new. If you compare roughly to it, I was looking at Nyaya realism, you know, and I was seeing how their interpretation or analysis goes of what is reality. Nyaya philosophy, very interestingly, take things for granted. It doesn't question common sense assumptions. Nyaya is one school of Indian philosophy, okay? It doesn't, you might not have heard, it's one particular realist school of Indian philosophy. Nyaya is not interested in questioning basic assumptions, our common sense view of the world. It takes it for granted.
But I think it's more theological kind of reasoning, isn't it?
Nyaya?
Yeah?
No, it's very practical. Very practical.
Very empirical.
Very empirical. For example, I didn't want to go into that at this point, but I'll say one of their tests of truth is called pravarti samatya, which is utility. You know, if you have a utility of something, they're quite pragmatic in that sense. You know, if something leads to a particular product, a fulfillment, then you can think about analyzing the truth about it. So they're very practical people. And early Nyaya even dismissed the idea of God. Yeah, at that time that was quite controversial to have, to dismiss God, because when you have more orthodox thinking around. What I actually wish to do now is, rather than me talking about Plato's allegory of the cave, you have these two characters, Socrates and Glaucon. If anybody knows Greek, you can tell me how to pronounce that name. But otherwise we will probably make an anglicized pronunciation of it, glucon or something, right? Like glucose. Glaucon. So what I wish to do is, one of you would read Socrates and another person would read Glaucon, okay? It's going to be a little... I don't want me to sleep, nor I want you to sleep. So let us do that. And then we will read only a portion of it. We will, since we have time, since we don't have much time, and then we will come back to our thoughts about it. And it is not a philosophy, as he said, in a kind of a very descriptive sense. But it's very interesting the way he describes it. Well, the allegory of the cave is the most famous. If you understand Plato, you would know that it's the most famous part of Plato's philosophy. It's basically, he talks about how people see reality in a condition, within certain conditions, or are we always conditioned to see reality? But let me not say it, and let us hear it, listen to it. So who would like to read from, and I have 2 copies, actually I have 2 copies, so somebody can read the Socrates part of it, and the other person can read the Glaucon part of it. So who will do, one can read the Socrates? Who would do, somebody else? Volunteer? Okay. And I guess none of you have the reading material, so you will have to just listen to what he reads. And well, I think I myself don't have another copy of it, so I will have to listen to it. So you don't have to read the first part, probably. Yeah, okay, or maybe would you like to read that too? So probably make an introduction. Yeah.
This is the introduction. The son of a wealthy and noble family, Plato, from 427 to 347 BC, was preparing for a career in politics when the trial and eventual execution of Socrates in 399 BC changed the course of his life. He abandoned his political career and turned to philosophy, opening a school on the outskirts of Athens dedicated to Socratic search for wisdom. Plato's school, then known as Academy, was the first university in Western history and operated from 387 BC until 529 AD, when it was closed by Justinian. Unlike his mentor Socrates, Plato was both a writer and a teacher. His writings are in the form of dialogues, with Socrates as the principal speaker. In the allegory of the cave, Plato described symbolically the predicament in which mankind finds itself and proposes a way of salvation. The allegory presents in a brief form most of the Plato's major philosophical assumptions. His belief that the world revealed by our senses is not the real world but only a poor copy of it, and that the real world can only be apprehended intellectually. His idea that knowledge cannot be transferred from teacher to student, but rather that education consists in directing students' mind towards what is real and important and allowing them to apprehend it for themselves. His faith that the universe ultimately is good, his conviction that enlightened individuals have an obligation to the rest of the society, and that a good society must be one in which the truly wise, he calls them the philosopher king, are the rulers. The allegory of the cave can be found in Book 7 of Plato's best-known work, The Republic, a lengthy dialogue on the nature of justice. Often regarded as a utopian blueprint, The Republic is dedicated toward a discussion of the education required of a philosopher king. The following section is taken from the Benjamin Jowett translation. The page number is 253 to 261. As you read the allegory, try to make a mental picture of the cave Plato describes. Better yet, why not draw a picture of it and refer to it as you read the selection? In many ways, understanding Plato's allegory of the cave will make your foray into the world of philosophical thought much less burdensome.
Okay, now what we can do is, since it's a dialogue, we can stop at certain points and then question the dialogue itself. But since we really are running short of time, maybe we'll be a little more patient and see if we can get 2-3 ideas and then raise a question, okay, rather than questioning all ideas. So probably you should start.
So I will
give a little more dramatic thing, Lata.
Okay. And now, I said, let me show in a figure how far our nature is enlightened or unenlightened. Behold, human beings living in an underground cave which has a mouth open towards the light and reaching all along the cave. Here they have been from their childhood and have their legs and neck chained so that they cannot move and can only see before them, being prevented by the chains for turning round their heads. Above and behind them a fire is blazing at a distance, and between the fire and the prisoners there is a raised way. And you will see, if you look, a low wall built along the way, like the screen which marionette players have in front of them, over which they show the puppets.
I see.
And do you see? I said men passing along the wall carrying all sorts of vessels and statues and figures of animals made of wood and stone and various materials which appear over the wall. Some of them are talking, others silent.
You have shown me a strange image, and they are strange prisoners.
Like ourselves. And they see only their own shadows or the shadows of one another, which the fire throws on the opposite wall of the cave.
True, he said. How could they see anything with the shadows if they were never allowed to move their heads?
And of the objects which are being carried in like manner, they will only see the shadows.
Yes, he said.
And if they were able to converse with one another, would they not suppose that they were naming what was actually before them?
Very true.
And suppose further that the prison had an echo which came from the other side, would they not be sure to fancy when one of the passers-by spoke that the voice which they heard came from the passing shadow?
No question, he replied.
To them, I said, the truth would be literally nothing but the shadows of the images.
That's certain.
And now look again and see what will naturally follow if the prisoners are released and disabused of their error. At first, when any of them is liberated and compelled suddenly to stand up and turn his neck round and walk and look towards the light, he will suffer sharp pains. The glare will distress him, and he will be unable to see the realities of which in his former state he had seen the shadows. And then conceive someone saying to him that what he saw before was an illusion, but that now when he is approaching nearer to being and his eye is turned towards more real existence, he has a clearer vision. What will be his reply? And you may further imagine that his instructor is pointing to the objects as they pass and requiring him to name them. Will he not be perplexed? Will he not fancy that the shadows which he formerly saw are truer than the objects which are now shown to him?
Far truer.
And if he is compelled to look straight at the light, will he not have a pain in his eyes which will make him turn away to take in the objects of vision which he can see, and which he will conceive to be in a reality clearer than the things which are now being shown to him?
True.
And suppose once more that he is reluctantly dragged up a steep and rugged ascent and held fast until he is forced into the presence of the sun himself. Is he not likely to be pained and irritated? When he is fast when he approaches the light, his eyes will be dazzled and he will not be able to see anything at all of what are now called realities.
Not all in a moment, he said.
He will require to grow accustomed to the sight of the upper world. And first he will see the shadows best. Next, the reflections of men and other objects in water. And then the objects themselves. Then he will gaze upon the light of the moon and the stars and the spangled heaven. And he will see the sky and the stars by night better than the sun or the light of the sun by day.
Certainly.
Last of, he will be able to see the sun.
I don't see how come this is a dialogue.
If you start off reading the Republic at the beginning, it is a dialogue, but eventually Socrates breaks down each and every argument that everyone else puts up. So it's basically all of their arguments are gone by this point, and they're just agreeing with whatever line of reasoning he's taking.
But in the second part, I'm seeing Glaucon is speaking.
Not speaking. It's about whether there is a dialogue or there is not. There is no dialogue.
You are tired of saying yes and true, right?
Can I have more of a part? No, the part, actually, as you're saying yes or no, you're also listening to Socrates. So a dialogue is not just speaking. Sometimes it's just listening.
Actually,
Yeah, that's an important point. That's an important
point. Not Socrates.
Because I'm trying to see the cave and everything.
Yeah, I'm listening to Plato, not Socrates.
Socrates is speaking.
Socrates is speaking.
Yeah.
Whatever, Plato makes Socrates to speak. Plato never says it is his view, He's so indebted to, yes.
believe Nietzsche actually interpreted the Platonic dialogue saying that Socrates...
Who interpreted? I didn't get this. Nietzsche, okay.
Interpreted the Platonic dialogue saying that this was actually to demonstrate the problems with Socrates' teaching because he takes it to an extreme. So Socrates will come to all these, what we may see as ridiculous conclusions, eugenics, we need...
basically,
kill all the poets. I would say fascism, that's a little problematic. And all these sort of things. This may actually demonstrate the problems with this rigorous scientific thinking that Socrates is supposed to demonstrate. So he suggests reading the Platonic dialogues with a sense of irony rather than an acceptance of whatever Socrates has to say.
Okay.
That's in such aliens.
Last he will be able to see the sun and not mere reflections of him in the water, but he will see him in his own proper place and not in another, and he will contemplate him as he is.
Certainly.
He will then proceed to argue that this is he who gives the season and the years, and is the guardian of all that is in the visible world, and in a certain way the cause of all things which he and his fellows have been accustomed to behold.
Clearly, he said, you would first see the sun and then reason about him.
And when he remembered his old habitation and the wisdom of the cave and his fellow prisoners, do you not suppose that he would felicitate him on the change and pity them?
Certainly he would.
And if they were in the habit of conferring honors among themselves on those who were quickest to observe the passing shadows, and to remark which of them went before, and which followed after, and which were together, and who were therefore best able to draw conclusions as to the future, do you think that he would care for such honors and glories, or envy the possessors of them? Would he not say with Homer, better to be the poor servant of a poor master, and to endure anything rather than think as they do and live after their manner?
Yes, he said, and I think that you would rather suffer anything than entertain these false notions and live in this miserable manner.
Imagine once more, I said, such an one coming suddenly out of the sun to be replaced in his old situation, would he not be certain to have his eyes full of darkness?
To be sure, he said.
And if there were a contest, and he had to compete in measuring the shadows with the prisoners who had never moved out of the cave, while his sight was still weak, and before his eyes had become steady, would he not be ridiculous? Men would say of him that up he went and down he came without his eyes, and that it was better not even to think of ascending. And if anyone tried to lose another and lead him up to the light, let them only catch the offender and they would put him to death.
No question.
The entire allegory, I said, you may now appear, dear Glaucon, to the previous argument. The prison house is the world of sight. The light of the fire is the sun. And you will not misapprehend me if you interpret the journey upwards to be the ascent of the soul into the intellectual world according to my poor belief, which at your desire I have expressed, whether rightly or wrongly God knows. But whether true or false, my opinion is that in the world of knowledge, the idea of good appears last of all, and is seen only with an effort, and when seen is also inferred to be the universal author of all things, beautiful and right, parent of light and of the world and of the Lord light in this visible world, and the immediate source of reason and truth in the intellectual. And this is the power upon which he who would act rationally, either in public or private life, must have his eye fixed.
Okay, I think at this point probably we got an idea of what it is. I think it will take more time, right, Leda? So can we stop here and then have probably your comments, your views about what you heard? Or, can I just have a look at it? Can somebody paraphrase what you understood about the cave? Allegory of the cave?
The idea is that everyone has grown up in this with a view that is not true or deep, and one person goes out and finds a deeper view. They're somehow set apart from all the people, everyone else, and this is a sense of isolation that a philosopher ultimately will feel.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, just like the story of H.G. Wells, no?
Country
of the Blind, exactly. There must be a take on this.
Yeah, that's right. The shock element, I mean, we are listening to the story of the cave and we're believing, okay, we are great intellectuals, we're thinking we are better than the other people. There's a kind of ego that rises up and you think, yeah, we are different, no, we have got eyes. And suddenly the shock is, imagine that this cave is this world and the sun is a thing. Then you suddenly realize that you are in a prison. I mean, as you're dialoguing with a master, you're thinking you're being elevated to some other level than ordinary thing. And then suddenly you realize even that is a cave.
Okay.
And so that element of shock and surprise is it's one of those things that I have seen teachers do that in dialogues. They suddenly draw out this rabbit and then put you into the prison. And you are left like, oh my God. And that shock element is very profound. It's very profound.
Any other views? No? Lina? Shailene? So this is supposed to be in a classical sense. It's very well known, the allegory of cave in Plato, and you study it in your postgraduate or graduate classes. I think, as Kishore said, of course he of course used the isolation of the philosopher, but I would think probably to any person, if not to be even a philosopher, when you see that or when you think that you are no more confined to a space which you were familiar with till yesterday, still that kind of a realization would not make it easy for you to accept what you see today, because you are already conditioned in a certain way to look at things. So it may not be easy for you to liberate yourself from a particular condition and look at different things. Also, I think this Plato's obsession with the form, the idea that only the intellect can. He uses the intellect in. I mean, we have to still understand what sense he uses the rational. I'm sure it's quite different from the idea of rationality, probably more as it used in the continental philosophy. But his distinction between what our senses see and what our intellect could see, and he categorized the idea of form as something which is completely the prerogative of the intellect and not as senses, and it's in a completely different world. Well, there are so many other interesting dialogues also, which probably you can dialogue or monologue in a strict sense, which you can read, and some of these are on love and friendship. If probably we had another class, we should have read that. I don't know whether did you get a chance to read on love and friendship? It's available in the net, so if you do a Google search, you should be able to find out that. Sorry?
Plato's ideas on love and friendship.
Yeah, love and friendship. Okay, I want to come to a discussion at the end, not at this moment. What I wish to do is again now go back to Russell, because again the same ideas comes, his distinction between sense data and sensation and your idea of reality. And again I would recommend this book, Problems of Philosophy by Russell. And the first chapter is called Appearance and Reality. And interestingly, the last chapter is called The Value of Philosophy. Okay, why you do philosophy. So even if you don't read the rest of the chapters, probably you should give some time to read the first chapter and the last chapter, Appearance and Reality. Okay, something is. You wanted something, Sahana? No. Okay. Noted. Okay. So now what I wish you to do is. Where is it? Did I bring it? Okay. I I don't think I have many copies. I have just one copy, but I don't know how much time we will take it, but I'm assuming that probably majority of us wouldn't have the time to look at it, maybe after this class. So it's a kind of, if we can listen to it now itself and somebody can read, I think it will be more effective. So I don't know how much time it will take, but it's worth listening to both the chapters if you don't have a problem with it. And then we will come back to the discussion. And this is more kind of concrete, I mean, not so kind of poetic as we read. And this is, so if we can write down the points as we listen to these two chapters, and then we come back to the discussion. Okay. So who can read it? Okay. I have reserved the Upanishad part for you. Okay. So, but you can read this as
just
well.
Just because I could read fast.
Yeah, sure.
And so.
Okay.
Chapter 1, Appearance and Reality.
Don't read too fast.
No, not too fast. Very good at reading. Is there any knowledge in the world which is so certain that no reasonable man... Is there any knowledge in the world which is so certain that no reasonable man could doubt it? This question, which at first sight might not seem difficult, is really one of the most difficult that can be asked. When we have realized the obstacles in the way of a straightforward and confident answer, we shall be well launched on the study of philosophy. For philosophy is merely the attempt to answer such ultimate questions, not carelessly and dogmatically as we do in ordinary life and even in the sciences, but critically after exploring all that makes such questions puzzling, and after realizing all the vagueness and confusion that underlie our ordinary ideas. In daily life, we assume as certain many things which on a closer scrutiny are found to be so full of apparent contradictions that only a great amount of thought enables us to know what it is that we really may believe. In search for certainty, it is natural to begin with our present experiences, and in some sense, no doubt, knowledge is to be derived from them. But any statement as to what it is that our immediate experience makes us know is very likely to be wrong. It seems to me that now I am sitting on a chair at a table of a certain shape on which I see sheets of paper with writing or print. By turning my head, I can see out of the window buildings and clouds and the sun. But I believe that the sun is about 93 million miles from the earth. It is that it is a hot globe many times bigger than the earth. That, owing to the earth's rotation, it rises every morning and will continue to do so for an indefinite time in future. I believe that if any other normal person comes into my room, he will see the same chairs and tables and books and papers as I see, and that the table which I see is the same as the table which I feel pressing against my arm. All this seems so evident as to be hardly worth stating, except in answer to a man who doubts whether I know anything. Yet all this may be reasonably doubted, and all of it requires much careful discussion before we can be sure that we have stated it in a form that is wholly true. To make our difficulties plain, let us concentrate our attention on the table. To the eye, it is oblong.
I really wish you to concentrate your attention on the table, okay?
To the eye, it is oblong, brown and shiny.
No.
It's almost the same table. To the touch, it is smooth and cool and hard. And when I tap it, it gives out a wooden sound. Anyone else who sees and feels and hears the table will agree with this description. So it might seem as if no difficulty would arise. But as soon as we try to be more precise, our troubles begin. Although I believe that the table is really of the same color all over, the parts that reflect the light look much brighter than the other parts, and some parts look white because of the reflective light. I know that if I move, the parts that reflect light will be different. So the apparent distribution of colors on the table will change. It follows that if several people are looking at the table at the same moment, no two of them will see exactly the same distribution of colors, because no two can see it from exactly the same point of view. And any change in the point of view makes some change in the way light is reflected. For most practical purposes, these differences are unimportant. But to the painter, they're all important. The painter has to unlearn the habit of thinking that things seem to have color with common sense, says they really have, and to learn the habit of seeing things as they appear. Here we already have the beginning of one of the distinctions that cause the most trouble in philosophy, the distinction between appearance and reality, between what things seem to be and what they are. The painter wants to know what things seem to be. The practical man and the philosopher want to know what they are. But the philosopher's wish is to know this stronger than the practical man's, and is more troubled by the knowledge so as to the difficulties of answering the question. To return to the table, it is evident from what we have found that there is no color which preeminently appears to be the color of the table, or even of any one particular part of the table. It appears to be of different colors from different points of view, and there is no reason for regarding that some of these as more really its color than others. And we know that even from a given point of view, the color will seem different by artificial light, or to a colorblind man, or to a man wearing blue spectacles, while in the dark there will be no color at all, though to touch and hearing the table will be unchanged. This color is not something which is inherent in the table, but something depending upon the table and the spectator and the way the light falls on the table. Why, when in ordinary life we speak of the color of the table, we only mean the sort of color which it will seem to have to a normal spectator from an ordinary point of view under usual conditions of light.
My God.
It's already troublesome, right?
But the other colors which appear under other conditions have just as a good right to be considered real, and therefore to avoid favoritism, we are compelled to deny that in itself the table has any one particular color. The same thing applies to texture. With a naked eye, one can see the gram, otherwise the table looks smooth and even. If we looked at it through a microscope, we should see roughness, hills and valleys and all sorts of differences that are imperceptible to the naked eye. Which of these is the real table? We are naturally tempted to say that what we see through the microscope is more real, but that in turn would be changed by a still and more powerful microscope. If then we cannot trust what we see with the naked eye, why should we trust what we see through a microscope? Thus again, the confidence in our senses with which we began deserts us. The shape of the table is no better. We are all in the habit of judging to the real shapes of things, and we do this so unreflectingly that we come to think we actually see the real shapes. But in fact, as we all have to learn, if we try to draw, a given thing looks different in shape from every point of view. If our table is really rectangular, it will look from on almost all points of view as if it had two acute angles and two obtuse angles. If opposite sides are parallel, they will look as if they converge at a point away from the spectator. Or if they are of equal length, they will look as if the nearer side were longer. All these things are not commonly noticed in looking at a table, because experience has taught us to construct the real shape from the apparent shape. And the real shape is what interests us as practical men. But the real shape is not what we see. It is something inferred from what we see. And what we see is constantly changing in shape as we move about the room. So here again, the senses seem not to give us the truth about the table itself, but only about the appearance of the table. Similar difficulties arise when we consider the sense of touch. It is true that the table always gives us a sensation of hardness, and we feel it resists pressure. But the sensation we obtain depends on how hard we press the table and upon what part of the body we press it with. Thus, the various sensations due to various pressures or various parts of the body cannot be supposed to reveal directly any definite property of the table, but at most to be signs of some property which perhaps causes all the sensations, but is not actually apparent in any one of them. And the same applies still more obviously to the sounds which can be elicited by rapping the table. Thus, it becomes evident that the real table, if there is one, is not the same as what we immediately experience by sight, touch or hearing. The real table, if there is one, is not immediately known to us at all, but must be an inference from what is immediately known. Hence, two very difficult questions at once arise, namely, is there a real table at all? If so, what sort of an object can it be? It will help us in considering these questions to have a few simple terms of which the meaning is definite and clear. Let us give the name sense data to the things that are immediately known in sensation, such things as colors, sounds, smells, hardness, roughness, and so on. We shall give the name sensation to the experience of being immediately aware of these things. Thus, whenever we see a color, we have a sensation of color. But the color itself is a sense datum, not a sensation. The color is that of which we are immediately aware, and the awareness itself is a sensation. It is plain that if we are to know anything about the table, it must be by means of sense data, brown color, oblong shape, smoothness, etc., which we associate with the table. But for the reasons which have been given, we cannot say that the table is sense data, or even that the sense data are direct properties of the table. Thus, a problem arises to the relation of the sense data to the real table, supposing that there is such a thing. The real table, if it exists, we will call a physical object. Thus, we have to consider the relation of the sense data to physical objects. The collection of all physical objects is called matter. Thus, our two questions may be restated as follows. Is there any such thing as matter? If so, what is its nature? The philosopher who brought prominently forward the reasons for regarding the immediate objects of our senses as not existing independently of us was Bishop Berkeley, 1685 to 1753. His three dialogues between Hylas and Philonius, in opposition to skeptics and atheists, undertake to prove that there is no such thing as matter at all, and the world consists of nothing but minds and their ideas. Hylas had believed in the matter, but he is no match for Philonius, who mercilessly drives him into contradictions and paradoxes, and makes his own denial of matter seem in the end as if it were almost common sense. The arguments employed are of very different value. Some are important and sound, others are confused or quibbling. But Berkeley retains the merit of having shown that the existence of matter is capable of being denied without absurdity. And if there are any things that exist independently of us, they cannot be immediate objects of our sensations. There are two different questions involved when we ask whether matter exists, and it is important to keep them clear. We commonly mean by matter something which is opposed to the mind, something which we think as occupying space and as radically incapable of any sort of thought or consciousness. It is chiefly in this sense that Berkeley denies matter. That is to say, he does not deny that the sense data which we commonly take as signs of the existence of the table are really the signs of existence of something independent of us, but he does not deny that this something is non-mental, that it is neither mind nor ideas entertained by some mind. He admits that there must be something which continues to exist when we go out of the room or shut our eyes, and that what we call seeing the table does really give us a reason for believing in something that persists even when we are not seeing it. But he thinks that this something cannot be radically different in nature from what we see. It cannot be independent of seeing altogether, though it must be independent of our seeing. He is thus led to regard the real table as an idea in the mind of God. Such an idea has a required permanence and independence of ourselves, without being, as matter otherwise be, something quite unknowable, in the sense that we can only infer it and can never be directly and immediately aware of it. Other philosophers since Berkeley have also held that although the table does not depend upon its existence, depend for its existence upon being seen by me, it does not depend upon being seen, otherwise apprehended in sensation, by some mind. Not necessarily the mind of God, but more often the whole collective mind of the universe. This they hold, as Berkeley does, chiefly because they think there can be nothing real or at any rate nothing known to be real except minds and their thoughts and feeling. We might state the argument by which they support their view in some such way as this: whatever can be thought of is an idea in the mind of the person thinking of it. Therefore, nothing can be thought of except ideas in minds. Therefore, anything else is inconceivable, and what is inconceivable cannot exist. Such an argument, in my opinion, is fallacious. And of course, those who advance it do not put it so shortly or crudely. But whether valid or not, the argument has been very widely advanced in one form or another, and very many philosophers, perhaps a majority, have held that there is nothing real except minds and their ideas. Such philosophers are called idealists. When they come to explaining matter, they either say, like Berkeley, that matter is nothing but a collection of ideas, or they say, like Leibniz 1646 to 1716, that what appears as matter is actually really a collection of more or less rudimentary minds. But these philosophers, though they deny matter as opposed to the mind, nevertheless, in another sense, admit matter. It will be remembered that when we ask two questions, namely, is there a real table at all? The second, if so, what sort of an object can it be? Now, both Berkeley and Leibniz admit that there's a real table. But Berkeley says it is certain ideas in the mind of God, and Leibniz says it's a colony of souls. Thus, both of them answer our first question in the affirmative, and only diverge from the views of ordinary mortals in their answer to our second question. In fact, almost all philosophers seem to be agreed that there is a real table. They almost all agree that however much our sense data, color, shape, smoothness may depend upon us, yet their occurrence is a sign of something existing independently of us, something different. Perhaps completely from our sense data, whenever we are in a suitable relation to the real table. Now, obviously, this point in which the philosophers are agreed, the view that there is a real table, whatever its nature may be, is vitally important, and it will be worthwhile to consider what reasons there are for accepting this view before we go on to the further question as to the nature of the real table. Our next chapter, therefore, will be concerned with the reasons for supposing that there is a real table at all. Before we go further, it will be well to consider for a moment what is it that we have discovered so far. It has appeared that if we take any common object of the sort that is supposed to be known by the senses, what the senses immediately tell us is not the truth about the object as it is apart from us, but only the truth about certain sense data which, so far as we can see, depend upon the relations between us and the object. Thus, what we directly see and feel is merely appearance, which we believe to be a sign of some reality behind. But if the reality is not what appears, have we any means of knowing whether there is any reality at all? If so, have we any means of finding out what it is like? Such questions are bewildering, and it is difficult to know that even the strangest hypothesis may not be true. Thus, our familiar table, which has roused but the slightest thoughts in us, hitherto, has become a problem full of surprising possibilities. The one thing we know about it is that it is not what it seems. Beyond this modest result, so far, we have the most complete liberty of conjecture. Leibniz tells us that it is a community of souls. Berkeley tells us it is an idea in the mind of God. Sober science, scarcely less wonderful, tells us it is a vast collection of electric charges in violent motion.
With mostly empty space. That's what the atom is, mostly empty space.
Among these surprising possibilities, doubt suggests perhaps there is no table at all.
Oh my God! Bang into it.
Philosophy, if it cannot answer so many questions as we could wish, at least has the power of asking questions which increase the interest of the world and show the strangeness and wonder lying just below the surface, even in the commonest things of daily life.
Okay.
That's also sense data, no? When you bang into the table.
I'm sorry?
Sorry?
That's also sense data, no? When you bang into the table.
Bang on
When you
the
bang into the table,
But
it's spoken like a
That's
man.
what
That's true.
But even that's a sensory perception. That's
Yes, but then try saying at that point the table isn't there.
I know. It's always a sensory.
So I think what Russell does is to take a common everyday experience of seeing the table, and trying to see how much we take for granted, what we consider as real or appearance. And it's a beautiful piece, and it is so well written. And he doesn't try to give you any concluding answers. What really the table is, that's not his. That's not his project, But he wants to encourage this questioning and how equally valid could be the other point of view also. So, but of course, he's a realist, and he's not like Berkeley. He wants to say that everything is dependent.
Yeah, he says at one point that I don't say that
I don't
it's
say
not
that
there.
not there at all. Even if God or somebody else says, he's quite realist in that sense. Okay, any comments about what you heard? And this is a beautiful piece, and I wanted to to be read it aloud because we didn't want to miss it. You can see the Russell's mind coming out of it. He has a sense of humor too,
In a lighter vein, there are many lessons for a photographer. Talks about different angles.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably the context and the perspective that you adopt and see. For an ant, maybe table is one mighty thing.
For a what?
For an ant.
Okay.
It's
At that point I didn't think.
So, just by the way you.
For an ant, maybe there's no concept of table, right?
Right, it's something. Whatever it calls.
Yeah.
That's a different
Whatever it
concept.
is.
That's different. That's different. Yeah. Because table itself is a human artifact. Okay. Any views, Kishore? You didn't.
Actually, it's really a mind matter question.
What exactly?
I mean, if you take a completely materialistic viewpoint, or even, a very crude interpretation of what the Jaina says, it's all the same matter. Life and not life, they don't make a distinction. Or you take purely materialistic, scientific viewpoint, then they would say mind is matter. And here it's saying actually the reverse, that there is no matter and only a mind. Is there a distinction at all?
No, I don't think that's what the article is going to
Yeah, I think probably what Russell wants us.
But what is mind? If you look at it from a purely, the biological evolutionary point of view, all we are saying is it's another arrangement of matter, and then you're back to what is matter.
What's your point?
No, I think it was really what the article was trying to say. It was merely positing the fact that our ideas about what constitutes matter might not be as simple as it is generally made out to be.
Yes.
I think that's the basic.
Yeah, that's the basic thing, and also, how we can question about things which we otherwise take for granted. You never question about it, but though it can make our life difficult, right? Unless you see it at table and stop it there, you won't be able to, make any use of the table. So that's why sometimes people say that in order to make a decision, too much information can be dangerous. Because at some point you will have to stop, because you have to make a decision. And information can be indefinite and can be kind of interpreted in so many ways, then you wouldn't have a relation with it. But I think what basically Russell is trying to do is to help our mind to question something which is otherwise too obvious, or we consider as too obvious. And also I think he wants to give us the different possibilities of looking at it. Of course, something which is already given and you accept it as a table. But then when we ask questions like what is the reality of table, it's not so simple. Because even amongst the people who see it, can be quite different. And the way you experience it could be quite different.
When she was talking about the ant, there's another view that like some of our Upanishads also ascribe to a kind of this kind of view that the world arises in language, you language it and then the table exists. For a person, this would be something else. So you're giving the nama, rupa, that philosophy, that has to be named before it to exist.
That's right.
And so the importance of naming human beings in psychology, why should you name? Because when you name, you get a psychological identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so world arises in language, in expression. So what about a dumb man? Does this world not exist?
Yes, that's right.
Is it a concept? Is it just speech? But each time you, and one more thing I see is, was it said, it will make life very difficult because also you will not be able to take stands.
Exactly.
When somebody says, are you in? For some time I will say whether I'm actually in or mentally, physically present, or there will be so many questions in my mind that, I mean, it could drive people a little crazy.
Yes.
Totally into
The takeaway would be this skill of questioning and looking at something in different perspectives. I think this is what
Yes.
should be
Also,
the
I think one other lesson is, if a simple thing like table can be so controversial about its reality, then can we be so comfortable saying that the many positions we take in, complex disciplinary approaches is it so easy when you take
And I don't think it's saying that there are many positions and all the positions are valid. It's saying that it's not so difficult to have a position unless until you actually thought to almost everything that is to think through.
Sorry, can you repeat what you said?
I mean, taking issue with what you said, in the sense it's not about whether there are many valid positions which you can pick and choose from the fact that to take any position which might be valid in any sense, you need a lot of thinking through
Yes.
to the fundamental.
Absolutely. Also, even if you can't agree with table, look at complex conceptual issues. We don't lead, in our daily life, we are not just dealing with table and chairs, but a lot of our interactions is through ideas and concepts, at least as, people doing in the academics, right? We deal with ideas, and concepts, and can't imagine, something so simple and given like table can produce a lot of controversy like this, how much. But we take it for granted that certain concepts mean only the same thing to everybody else, and therefore what you say should be a kind of have a common agreement to it.
And so I think that's where you build up empathy. As you start thinking.
Absolutely, it's just absolutely, Meera.
He doesn't see. I'm totally empathizing there. You cannot understand.
Maybe you should see the movie The Ants.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yes, Kishore, you wanted to say something?
But the thing is, it seems like everything will have, all understandings of things will have some sort of fluid aspect to it, but it will also have some definite aspect to it.
Yes.
The table, Russell talks about all the fluid nature of what it means to be a table. But this table could also be a bookshelf, it could be a seat, it could be all these other things.
You mean fundamentally, the material of it, right?
That seems like when we try to analyze something, we will be taking that perspective, like a single solitary perspective. That seems necessary to the process of trying to understand something. So we kind of have to have one way of looking at it, and we have to understand that we are looking at it that one way.
Yes. Well, if I grasped all the points which you were trying to say, well, it's very important that we need to have a standpoint, and we need to have a definite definition for its identity, right? The table has to be identified at least in certain basic features about which we have a consensus. But I think there's also another point that whenever you understand something, even conceptually or physically by sensation, you have two things, what is called as the foreground and the background, right? You see something as focused and something in the background, right? And most of the time probably we tend to take it for granted what is in the, what do we focus and what is behind. So probably this article also helps us to help you to see, probably what you should also give more attention to what you are really trying to put it in the background. The context. Because most often something gets a meaning when you look at it in a particular context. Though the context per se is not given enough attention. You try to kind of abstract those entities and discuss by itself. The table gets a meaning, a definite meaning, when its utility is concerned, or when my relation to it is discussed. But when it is abstractly discussed, then you can go to an indefinite point of view.
And the assumption is you can see.
The assumption is, of course, you can see. You can make use of it.
I think there are two things here. Two issues involved. First issue, I think the article was about how do you know that it's a table? I mean,
Yeah, or how do you
perceive it?
Yeah, I think Russell takes it for granted that it's a table.
Yeah.
You can see.
Okay, maybe he'll just complete.
What I was trying to raise was another question altogether. I mean, not the great. I mean, the more fundamental question is what is the table? I mean, of a far more, I mean, basic definitional issue, like. I mean,
color, texture.
No, I mean, what's a
Is there a timetable?
No, what's a table?
What's a table?
What's a table? I mean, and then the whole thing about, again, another order of questioning starts. So, I don't know. I mean, I basically don't get what we're trying to talk about. I mean, it's not that there should be focus, but I don't.
You mean what this article talks about?
No, what we're talking about.
What we are talking about. I thought we are talking about sense. At least I think I understood all of others what they were trying to say. Well, what Russell, I don't think his attempt is to define a table. I don't think he's trying to define it.
Your question was more in terms of what is the table rather than how do we perceive it?
No, what he says is, maybe I should paraphrase you, Kishore, and then probably if I am also wrong, then you may have to repeat it, because maybe then we didn't understand you. Okay, well, I think if I understood him, what he said is that even if there are multiple perspectives of understanding something, you need to have a definite viewpoint, right? That was the crux of what you said.
There needs to be a consensus as to what.
Yes.
It should be about what is it about. I mean, that's what I took off.
So the consensus most often probably, I think it's dependent upon its utility. I think finally we have to come to that point.
About how from an ant it may look like something different than
that's more abstract, I think.
Yeah.
That's more abstract. But here I think as far as, you know what's a table, because it serves certain utilitarian functions. It provides that. That's right. So we are not actually trying to construct a table based on that.
But here the assumption is we already know what a table is.
We already know what's a table, but then we already know what a table is, and we think that other person also know what's a table. But what he tries to say is the experience of the table is so different for all of us. But still, we have a consensus that's a table. I mean, of course, there are a lot of philosophical discussions which we can go into all this, which probably Plato considered as this class of form, and Nyaya considered as the jadi. There's a whole lot of discussion in Nyaya about cow and cowness. There's this general class called cowness. Category. I mean, that of course is something.
That's also a linguistic issue.
It's linguistic issue. Several issues are concerned.
No. It's like
semantic.
but it's also linguistic in terms of category. Dog. But what is dog or dogness? A dog. This is a dog.
It's not actually what we think.
So
therefore, probably how do we deal with concepts? I mean, he doesn't say, but I think we can take this. Concepts are more complex entities with which we deal with in our daily life, right? I'm sorry? And more abstract. But then we assume that we all agree to it and we have one point of it, right? Which may not be true. So I think that's a kind of maybe we should think about it more and then get back to it.
Sometimes he also talks about the truth being only the sense data. I don't know if the sense data can be a constant across, or is it going to be a relative term again, like a sensation?
That's right. The sense data, he talks about the color, touch, texture,
It's not the
these
characteristic
classes.
of a table. He distinguishes
Yes,
that.
that's
So
right.
We have to come to an agreement on what sense data is.
Yes.
To define that.
Yeah.
Also. And here that is also relative.
Yeah.
He actually says the sense data depends upon the relationship between us and the object. Because the sense data varies on where
So
I'm
it's still
standing.
subjective.
It's still subjective.
Yeah.
So the only
As
thing is
subjective as a sensation itself.
is our relationship.
Is that the point? I don't know. I don't think that.
Well, sorry.
Because all knowledge is ultimately subjective. I mean, there's no such thing as just.
No, Kishore, Russell doesn't agree to that point.
No, I don't think
He doesn't agree. He doesn't agree to that. He says he's not agreeing with Berkeley. He says even if a God is there or nobody is there, it is not so wise to imagine that already it has to be thought by somebody to be
I'm not saying
existing.
that. I'm not saying that the objects themselves exist only as a result of some sort of subjective quality. I'm saying that
Knowledge,
is subjective. And it's not like data can just hang in space like that. It has to be interpreted in order to be knowledge.
Yeah. But knowledge is subjective is, I mean, definitely knowledge is also an objective world. I mean, because that's why we all know it's a table. That's why I'm able to. You don't feel weird that I'm using a table. It's a shared knowledge. So there is something called the private knowledge as well, which we take it. But at the same time, what I think it's an implicit. The subject knowledge is implicit, which we forget sometimes. The implicitness of it.
All questions about subjectivity. I think I don't know. Maybe this is besides the point. Ease with which we use these categories becomes very clear, and the problem inherent in them becomes very clear. When you deal with concrete categories like it's madness.
Like what?
Like madness. No, for example, like
magnets.
Madness. Like
madness. Okay.
Like, for example,
I heard magnets.
Why is someone schizophrenic? I mean.
Okay.
So one has to ask actually concrete questions like that for us to be able to answer. I mean, claims about subjective knowledge, like I don't have a problem with it, but only thing I'm trying to say is that maybe it's not as simple.
Yeah, they cannot be something as exclusively.
Knowledge, as all knowledge being subjective, it might not be as simple as sometimes.
They cannot be something completely, exclusively called as subjective knowledge. Right? It cannot be something completely called as subjective knowledge.
It might not be as simple as we generally.
Yeah, but there are a lot of things which are implicit. Which we may have to bring into more discussion. Our own discussion, not necessarily maybe with you or somebody else. In your own, I mean, that's the whole philosophy about it.
There's also evolutionary knowledge, isn't it?
Evolutionary about what?
Evolutionary knowledge.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry?
I need to meet my school.
Okay, you need to meet her. Okay, now at this point I have to ask, if I have to really complete this, and I mean, that's why I asked you in the beginning, I have to complete this lecture, I would need at least 1 more hour. Are you ready for that?
No, I'm not.
You're not. Okay.
Can we do that tomorrow? And this we can add one more hour to tomorrow's lecture.
Okay.
Or
But
if it's okay.
the only thing is that it's a little connected.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know whether you would lose the track or
no. I'm okay if I just go and meet.
Yeah, you can go and come, or maybe see what I'll tell you what I want to do. I would like the next chapter also to be read.
Upanishads.
No. The value of philosophy. And then a part of maybe we won't take the Upanishad, I mean, full. It will take probably a lifetime for that. But just a part of the Kena and again you'll see the questioning method. It's very interesting. Can you spare some time on this? And then we can conclude this, because tomorrow's might be a bit different. So I don't know if I will be able to incorporate
Not
it.
another hour.